All right. Uh, Good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me clearly. I'm doing a little impromptu live here tonight where I'm going to share with you some thoughts I have on the current situation, the current conditions of the, um, the pandemic, how that has been handled by the government. But first of all, let me just make sure that all of the technical features are working properly here. I need to just fix one thing on this screen. Yeah, here we go. At least I'm trying. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another live session on UIC Liberty TV. I'm going to share a little bit with you this evening some thoughts I have. But first, I want to get my screens working here properly. Let's see if I can do that. I'm being the technical guy tonight. Normally, I have Mr. Devon Thompson helping me out, but tonight he's helping me to go solo with the technical aspects of all of this. So I hope you don't mind as I get my bearings. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Samuel. Good evening, Daniel. Good evening, Jay. Good evening, Debbie. Good evening, Cornell. Good evening, Malcolm X. Welcome back from the grave. Good evening, Debbie. Bless up. Good to see you all. I see a question here from Gavin. If the UIC is a libertarian party, we're a freedomist party. We're about freedom, protecting the rights and liberties of all Jamaicans. Huh? Yeah. So give me a second here. Let me see if I can. I want to play something for you before we start. I want you to listen carefully to what this news item has to say, and the rest of my discussion tonight is going to be based on that. So let me see if I can get that going right. I'm going to share my screen here. Just a second, and then I'm going to share that with you all. Let's see. Here we go. Yeah. So I hope you'll be able to see that quite well. Uh, so yes, good night again, everyone. Good night, Carolyn. Good night, Dakota. Uh, Great. So let's take a listen. So this is a piece of news item that I think is very, very important. And what you're going to see in this news item is that some countries, Norway, as well as Singapore, Norway and Singapore, are actually deciding that they are going to drop quite a bit of in fact, all of the major restrictions that they've had because the vaccine, sorry, I shouldn't say vaccine, the joke isn't quite working out in their country. So they're actually, going to change that. But before I go into that, let me take a few questions here. I see some people asking a few things. Oh, Colin is saying this party is more relevant than the one of the other ones. Yes, we're very relevant actually because we're in a quite a predicament as a country. And I think we've seen long enough how these other parties operate. We have enough experience, enough knowledge now to know that we need to do something quite different. And so tonight I'm going to talk about the government's pandemic response. I'm going to speak more candidly about where I think this is going and what we need to do as a people in response. We have put up with this now for what, almost 2 years. We've put up with the government's approach. People are suffering, people are struggling, and it's time for us to have a clear picture of where this government is taking us, and for us to make a decision as a people what we're going to do about that. So good night, good night. Thank you all so very much for joining. Yes, please go ahead and share this live with as many people as you can so that they can hear what we have to say. So a number of countries are beginning to realize that this pandemic response that they have bought into may not be quite what they thought it was, and they're beginning to rethink. Of course, the US isn't there yet, and Jamaica is far from there because our government tends to be very slow in understanding, anticipating, analyzing, forecasting, and making decisions based on the context of Jamaica, where Jamaica is, our unique circumstances, our needs here as a people. They tend to make decisions based on what their foreign masters do, and they just do a cut and pasting. So tonight I'm going to kind of open that up, right? I'm going to open that up. I'm going to unmask for you where I believe and where the UIC believes the government is heading and what we need to do to fix that. So I'm going to share with you a news item first. Listen carefully to what they're saying, what other countries are now realizing, what they're doing. Now, the good thing is Jamaica is nowhere near where some of these countries are in terms of how many people they have juked already. So Jamaica is still, far way down. We're not. The last time I heard, the Prime Minister was saying about 13% of the nation have already taken 2 doses of this biological substance into them. So we're in a fairly good position from that standpoint, in that they've not been able to successfully force enough of us to take this on. And on top of that, the supply is also short, so they don't have enough supplies yet. And I saw recently the news where they had to throw out approximately 60,000 or so vials, which roughly is probably somewhere in the region of about 140 or so doses, right? 140,000 or so doses or more. So this is good. This is good. So I'm really happy that Jamaicans have not been tricked and forced to the maximum level of some countries. So take a look at this, and then we're going to talk about it in the context of the experience of Israel. What has happened in Israel? Israel has a very, very high uptake. They have been able to juke a really big percentage of their people, over 80%, I'm hearing. And the experience of Israel can teach us a lot. And similarly, the experience of Singapore, that also did mass vaccination, mass juke. I prefer juke because then it, make life easier for the algorithms. So, but the mass injection in Israel and in Singapore and similar countries can teach us a lot about where Jamaica would be heading if we followed the Prime Minister's direction, and where we would head if we do not follow that direction, but instead follow the UIC's approach. So, welcome Dolores, welcome Diane, welcome Manika. Nice to have you all. Welcome Nick. Good night. Good night to you all. And let's now watch this video and learn a little bit about how other countries are faring that have followed the path that the Prime Minister wants to take us on. We're going to see what's happening in those countries and how we can learn from them and how we can be smart about this and not destroy Jamaica because we have leaders who don't think but simply follow the money given to them by their foreign masters and do whatever they're told, as opposed to thinking and analyzing and reaching good decisions. So once again, good night. And let's take a look now on this video I'm going to share with you.
Hi, Kim. What's on your...
The Norwegian government abruptly announced that beginning the day, all COVID restrictions would end. No vaccine mandates, no vaccine passports, no masks, full capacity at every venue, large concerts, parties, sporting events, you name it. Normal life would resume. Prime Minister Ernest Solberg warned, quote, even though everyday life is now back to normal for most people, the pandemic is not over. People will still get sick, and therefore it is important that everyone gets vaccinated. The country currently has 67% of its population fully vaccinated. However, despite the high rates, this month the country also saw its largest spike in COVID cases, which it is now finally coming down from. The reason for lifting all of the restrictions isn't what you would expect. The Norwegian government didn't cite high vaccination rates or even having the virus under control as justification for returning to life as normal. Instead, the prime minister said the lifting of restrictions is due to fatigue in the public of constantly changing restrictions and the lack of normalcy in their daily lives. She cautioned that the virus is still with the world, so take personal responsibility. Hearing the news, the Norwegian people flooded the streets Saturday in celebrations that rivaled Mardi Gras. Singapore has also announced it will be living with COVID. The country has 82% of its population fully vaccinated with Pfizer and Moderna nearly exclusively. Despite the extremely high rate, Singapore is in the middle of its largest wave ever in cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. Because of the immense pressure on their hospitals, the country has implemented temporary restrictions to slow the spread while they ramp up building more medical facilities. But once they do that, they say life will go on as normal, even though they anticipate doing so will result in waves 3 times the size of what they're currently experiencing.
The government has said time and time again, expect cases to rise. We have seen that.
Right.
But the government has also said we will live with COVID.
Sure.
Endemic states. What does that entail? How does that look like?
So we are moving in this journey towards living with COVID. And that's why you would see with the restrictions that we have taken, we have not gone back to a circuit breaker or to a lockdown. We are tightening measures so that we can slow down the rate of transmission and use this time to augment our healthcare capacity and to be able to deal with a higher volume of cases without our healthcare system being overwhelmed. I'm quite sure, even after we have stabilized our healthcare system, gotten the new capacity in place, cases will continue to be high. The virus will continue to circulate. That's what living with COVID means, and that's what we are on a journey towards.
Health experts in Singapore say part of this new transition to living with COVID will include a mentality shift. They say the messaging surrounding COVID-19 as a dangerous and deadly disease needs to change, that the messaging to the public that COVID-19 is predominantly a mild disease needs to be clear. And it seems the government of Singapore is listening. They are now urging people to not rush off to the hospital when they test positive, but instead stay home, use self-care, and not to worry. One thing to note is that neither the government of Norway nor Singapore even mention the unvaccinated. They do not place blame on the people who have not chosen to get the vaccines. In Norway, the prime minister urged people, especially minority communities, to get vaccinated, but never demonized them nor blamed them for their latest surge in cases or inability to eradicate the virus. There are no passports or mandates in either country, people living as equals regardless of their medical status. They urge people to get vaccinated, but beyond that, there are no checks or restrictions on those who haven't. Other countries have also chosen to live with the virus. The UK lifted all restrictions in July despite increasing numbers. However, they are reserving the right to reverse this winter if hospitalizations increase. Denmark, Portugal, and Ireland have also announced a lifting of all restrictions, citing high vaccination rates. They know that things might get worse and they may also reverse course. But for now, they are saying as long as hospitalizations remain low, they will continue to just live with the ever-spreading, ever-mutating virus. Thailand is also now living with the virus despite low vaccination rates and increasing cases. There are a few takeaways from the increase in countries choosing to simply live with it. First of all, it is impossible to eradicate the virus if countries are just letting it circulate. They are not attempting to get rid of it anymore. Singapore is anticipating larger spikes than what they have now, but the reason they are letting it circulate is because they know there is no getting rid of the virus. They've come to terms with that fact and have moved on, focusing on hospitalizations and death rates. In focusing on hospitalizations and deaths, these countries are now sending the message to their public that the young and healthy are not at high risk. When you catch COVID, stay home, self-isolate, and take care of yourself. For the vast majority of people, COVID-19 is a mild disease. Singapore has begun giving out booster doses to their most vulnerable to keep them protected, since they know they are the ones to likely end up hospitalized. None of these countries are panicking about their unvaccinated children. These countries are ahead of us in vaccination rates with the same vaccines we use here in this country. And yet in these nations, just like in Israel, massive spread still happens. This shows us that unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be a magical herd immunity threshold we can hit that will stop the spread. Perhaps the metric we should focus on is hospitalizations and deaths. We know the groups who are most at risk of severe outcomes. That hasn't really changed despite the new variants. The elderly, people with hypertension or diabetes, and people with a BMI over 35, amongst other risk factors. Perhaps we should have a public health campaign to educate people about their individual risk while ramping up hospital capacity in the same way Singapore is doing. One thing seems certain. With increasing mandates and the constant dehumanizing of the unvaccinated, we are tearing away at the fabric of our free nation while furthering the divide between us. And in the end, the virus will still be here.
So it's very, very clear, my friends, that the campaign to juke everybody in a country does not work. We're finding out that the more we inject people, the spike will still happen. People are still going to get sick. People are still going to transmit the virus. People are still going to die. And for the most part, it seems as if what they've told us is the solution is turning out not to be the solution after all. Now, tonight I want to talk to you about Jamaica in particular. You've just seen what's happening in other countries and the fact that many countries that have now gotten significant rates of injections are changing course because they realize it's not working. Will our government here change course? Now, that's a good question. So, once again, everyone, good evening, my fellow Jamaicans. In keeping with the objectives of the UIC to create one Jamaica, I would like to focus on the things that unite us as a people. I believe that there are more things that we have in common than differences. And if there's one thing I believe we're all united in, it is wanting this pandemic to end and for our fundamental rights and freedoms to be fully restored. That, my friends, unites us. Every Jamaican, whether you are for or against the government measures, you want this pandemic to end and you want our rights and freedoms to be fully restored. So tonight I want to focus on this very important element which pulls us all together. As you know, the UIC is a uniting force. We are an unusual kind of political party because we want to end partisan politics. We want to unite Jamaicans. We want to get rid of the division, the partisan division of JLP versus PNP. We want to get rid of the divisions of uptown versus downtown. We want to get rid of the divisions of Rasta versus Ballhead. We want to get rid of the divisions of Maroons versus non-Maroons. And what we want is to be able to live together in peace, regardless of whether you're religious or not religious, whether you are from the Rastafari community or not. We want to give our Rasta friends the rights they deserve, the Maroon friends the rights they deserve. We want to make sure Christians and non-Christians live in peace. We want to make sure that Jamaica is not divided into two tribes anymore, fighting for scarce benefits and spoils. We want one Jamaica. We don't want a poor Jamaica and a rich Jamaica. We want one Jamaica that allows every Jamaican to achieve their full potential because the country is designed to allow them to achieve their full potential. Whether you're a business operator, a worker, a corner shop owner, a farmer in the mountains, a fisherman, a vendor in the market or on the sidewalk, a taxi driver, a truck driver, a bus operator or a conductor, a banker, an IT specialist, a doctor, a nurse, a researcher, a scientist, a member of the police force, a member of the security guards, a cosmetologist. We are all Jamaicans and we're all united in wanting a solution to come about that ends this crisis. People, we're all frustrated. We're all desperate and looking for a way forward. but solutions require information. But it seems that every conceivable obstacle is being thrown in the way of us getting at the facts. Those who try to speak the truth are oppressed simply because they do not wish to follow the narrative that is proposed. They're vilified, they're censored, they're even arrested. They place derogatory label on us. This is a tool that they use to segregate people, to vilify people, to label people in such a way that you don't even want to hear from them. Tonight, I want to bury two of those labels. I want to get rid of two of those labels that have come to stop people from listening and understanding the hard truth that we must face today. One of those labels is conspiracy theory. This label is one of their favorites. They use this label to distract people from digging deeper, from questioning anything coming from the government or mainstream media. They use this label of conspiracy theory to control people. They use this to make it seem as if you don't know what you're talking about. We all know that many important scientific discoveries began as theories. A theory is an important starting point in discovering the truth. Some theories are outlandish and whimsical, but because something is a theory does not mean it is without a sound basis. What is important is whether these theories are supported by logical reasons and grounded in facts and reality. The truth is not dependent on how comfortable you are with it. And the fact that a theory may go against one's belief is no reason for us to dismiss it without careful study and evidence. It is a fact that the world's leaders and billionaires conspire every day. They lied about weapons of mass destruction and started costly wars that lost or took from us many lives. This was done by conspirators, many of whom have made their fortune from promoting wars and selling arms and dangerous medications. They meet regularly and they make plans for global change. They conspire, but those plans are never called conspiracies by the mainstream media. Only your reference to their schemes are labeled as conspiracy theory. They want to dismiss you. They want to want to shed some light as to what is going on. But don't be distracted by the labels. I want to encourage you to dig and dig until you're satisfied, until things begin to make sense to you. I want you to dig until you find the truth. I want you to dig until you are certain that you have found the real meaning behind what is happening. I want you to be inquisitive. I want you to even question what I say. I want you to check out everything about the UIC and see if it makes sense. Don't just take my word for it or the word of anyone else in our organization. And the same for the government. Don't just trust the government's word. Don't trust everything the prime minister or the health minister or the so-called medical authorities say. Question them. Go and look at other people. Listen to other people. Check out things, and you might be surprised. Another distracting label that they put on us is the term anti-vaxxer. This label has been applied to the UIC and others who oppose the use of force and fraud. By us simply opposing the use of force and fraud to get the public to take part in an experimental gene therapy, you're called anti-vaxxer. This is a trick. The labeling is intended to make us look like irresponsible quacks who fly in the face of the proven value of vaccine over the ages. This is analogous to concluding that because I dislike tigers, that means I hate cats, which does not follow, of course. Maybe my dislike for tigers is well founded. They're, after all, man eaters and they can kill you. But that doesn't mean I don't like cats in general. This simplistic and kindergarten psychology is widely used to hide the facts about this pandemic and to silence opposing views. I urge all Jamaicans, don't take the words of corrupt leaders as gospel. You need to do your own research to find out what is in the juk and what it is likely to do to your body in the coming months and years. It is a lack of information and perceived dishonesty of politicians why 70% of us are not convinced of the government's goodwill or good intentions. We just do not trust the government. And you have no reasons to. Why would you, for heaven's sake, trust a prime minister who tried to manipulate the system by having senators sign undated resignation letters so that should they disagree with his position, they can't act independently because he would simply date those letters, submit them, and force them to be no longer a senator? Why would you trust a prime minister like that? Why would you trust a prime minister who tried to manipulate the Chief Justice by putting him on a temporary contract that he can pull at any time should the Chief Justice not cooperate with him and help him to undermine the justice system? Why would you trust a prime minister like that? Why would you trust a prime minister that tried to slip through a NIDS bill that was clearly a contravention of your basic and fundamental human rights and had to be stopped by the courts? There is so many reasons why you should not trust this prime minister. He promised you that he was going to create a grand, prosperous economy and achieve 5% growth in 4 years. He failed dismally. He promised you that elect him and you'll be able to sleep with your windows and doors open. He failed dismally. He promised you that he was going to install fixed election dates. He simply ignored his promise. He made so many promises and has failed to live up to even one of them. Why would you want to trust such a person with your life? Now, Jamaicans are not alone in rejecting this fake vaccine. I dare say it. They're not alone. And many people around the world are also rejecting the abuse of our civil liberties by government. The cry is loud and clear: my body, my choice. That phrase now echoes across the globe as a call to resist medical tyranny, and I encourage each and every one of you to stand up with me and fight back and say no to medical tyranny. Despite the all-out efforts of the local and international media to block out news on the harmful impacts of the juk, they have not been successful. Everywhere there are men and women trying hard to get the message out that the governments of the world and those who back them are lying to us. The images of flooded social media showing the massive street protests as millions of citizens around the globe intensify their fight against the global elite's force and fraud tactics. We in Jamaica must not be silent. We in Jamaica must demonstrate that powerful history we have of a Nanny and a Marcus Garvey. Despite all of this controversy and opposition, The curtailment of rights and the vaccine injuries and the deaths officially reported, Jamaica remains divided about the real intention of the pandemic response. There is a minority of us ardently supporting the narrative of the mainstream media and the government's joke campaign, and some are even supporting the mandatory aspects of these plans. These individuals and their companies feel that the government is correct and that the UIC's call for freedom of choice and informed consent for any medical treatment is irresponsible, and that we must joke the entire nation if possible and by any means necessary. I was shocked to hear PhDs, highly educated men and women who should be intelligent, calling for mandatory joke by any means necessary. How irresponsible. You can't believe that these people have 1 ounce of education. But guess what? We in the UIC are not afraid of disagreements, because disagreements are opportunities to test and discourage, or rather, test and discover the truth. Sometimes the truth is bitter and unpleasant. It takes strength and courage to face it. But it is the truth that will set us free. If ever there was a time to be courageous and strong, that time, that hour is now, my friends. The prophetic words of the Bible come to mind in its warning that what was hidden from the wise and prudent will be revealed in the babe and suckling. As sure as night follows day, will the wickedness of this regime be exposed to ordinary Jamaicans. As Jamaicans say, time longer than rope. And as each day passes, the Andrew Holness government is exposing itself as a dictatorial regime full of lies and trickery, whose prosperity slogan was not for the average citizen struggling to make ends meet, but for the wealthy, local and international foreign masters to get even wealthier from the sweat of the Jamaican people. Yes, my friends, our own government has sold us out, and it's not the first time, and it's not just this administration. They have consistently sold us out over the 77 years that they have been in office, both of them, and it's time for us to let them go. There's no doubt that this is the most lying and tricky government in the country's history. They have told us lies after lies after lies after lies. And I can't imagine one single Jamaican who would want to continue to believe this government. Let's take a look at some of the lies. Lie number 1. They tell us the vaccines are safe and effective when there's no long-term safety data. So this has to be a deliberate lie. As Jamaicans would say, it is not the same day a leaf go river bottom, it rotten. People don't know what the future will hold for their health when they take this biotechnology substance into them. So it's a damn lie. The Prime Minister lied to us. The Health Minister lied to us. They have no idea how safe and effective this biotechnological substance is going to be. And so how dare them tell Jamaicans it is safe and effective? And history is already showing us that that's not true. Lie number 2, they tell us that this injection is like childhood vaccines, knowing very well that this was an entirely different substance and treatment altogether. They know this synthetic gene therapy was never used on the public before. They must have known that in the past, vaccines had been produced over 8 to 12 years and have more of a safety testing process than we have today. Yes, some will tell you that, well, modern technology allows us to shorten the time span. There's no amount of modern technology to tell you how this is going to impact the human body over 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. And so this is reckless, dangerous, and irresponsible. And the truth is, the Prime Minister should be ashamed of himself to carry on this charade in front of the Jamaican people. Lie number 3, that once a person had been juked, the country would return to normal. The Prime Minister tricked the people into doing nothing about boosting their own health and immunity by focusing us on waiting on a so-called vaccine for almost a year, promising it as a silver bullet cure. Now people are being told that the pandemic measures must remain in place as the juked can still get infected and infect others as well, and that the juke itself is not as effective as previously thought. It will only last for about 6 months. If this is the case, why are employers forcing the unvaccinated employees to get the juke if their status is the same as the vaccinated? Simple question. Why are they trying to force on one set of people when the other set is no better, really? Lie number 4, the vaccines are 95% effective. This is another Government of Jamaica cut and paste lie from the World Health Organization. Many Jamaicans who took the joke did so believing, as they were told, that it would protect them from death and avoid hospitalization. But now we know that that was a lie, as an increasing number of vaccinated people are being infected, injured, and some are even dying. Lie number 5. The Prime Minister tells us that the poor and the corner shops are particularly responsible for increasing the spread of the virus, while he himself and his government claim no responsibility. I make no apologies, he says, for any spread resulting from holding a general election in the middle of a pandemic. It's this Prime Minister who opened the borders to tourists and to cruise ships, while causing mad rushes and massive crowds with his lockdowns, curfews, and no movement days. Lie number 6. They fail to disclose that they're making us lab rats for the unapproved drug remdesivir, which has a very poor track record of safety and effectiveness against the disease, while blocking ivermectin from the public health strategy. Ivermectin is an approved and proven effective prophylaxis and treatment for SARS disease. Yet, it was deliberately withheld from the people of Jamaica, causing unnecessary suffering and deaths. Minister Tufton also lied. This is lie number 7. He lied when he said no one anywhere in the world had been injured or had died from the joke when his ministry had information to the contrary. This is a bold-faced lie, and we must never forget it as the number of joke-related deaths begin to increase. Lie number 8. This is the Delta variant lie. Another one from the Ministry of Health and Wellness. How could the Minister Tufton, know there were cases of the Delta variant here in Jamaica when there are no tests to detect such a variant? Which test did he use to detect this or any new variant? This is what I'm talking about, friends. The lies of this government. Now for lie number 9. The Minister of Education lied and tricked parents into joking their kids on the promise of returning to face-to-face learning when they just want to get closer to their herd immunity target and never intended to restart in-class learning any at all. Please remember this lie as the number of child pregnancies go up, as the number of child abuse cases go up, as the learning deficit data becomes public, and we see the severe damage they have done to our children our communities, and our country. Lie number 10. The Prime Minister blasphemously lied when he said that God made this biotech substance, attributing a divine purpose to the drug to once again mislead and manipulate the people to achieve his nefarious objective. Lie number 11. The Prime Minister again knowingly lied when he said he was not for mandating this drug. He was lying even while putting in place the legal framework for mandating it and while turning a blind eye to the evil employers who are mandating the joke on an already economically depressed and oppressed set of employees. They are wicked set. They know that the average Jamaican is already struggling economically from the low wages that they're receiving. They know that many Jamaicans are underpaid. They know that many of us can hardly put food on the table, much more pay for PCR tests. And so they use our economic disadvantage against us, the very economic disadvantage that they created. Yes, these same companies are the ones that fund these two major parties. They're the ones that have funded them over the last 77 years and helped them to crush the Jamaican people and made us a nation of wage slaves and unemployed. And then they turn around now and use that weakened economic position against us to take the joke or lose your job. The government of Jamaica claim this is all for the greater good. But how can you get good from this bad? How can you begin with a lie and say it is for the greater good? How can deception and trickery and bribery be good for the people of Jamaica? How can turning an entire nation into a dangerous laboratory be good for its people? Well, let me tell you something. This juke campaign of Andrew Holness and his administration, which has been supported, by the way, by the opposition and all 63 members of parliament in the House, let me tell you, this is not for any greater good. This is for the greatest possible bad. And that bad is to take away your freedom and to make you the slaves of others. There is a monetary component to this that I'll speak about at another time. But let's look at this. Where are we headed? Fellow Jamaicans, the Holness administration has a plan for us all. The plan is based on the ultimate lie. What I'm about to tell you is not made up by the UIC. It is based on the Government of Jamaica's stated objectives. They are offering the ultimate bait, the final promise to get you to take the joke. It is the promise of herd immunity, as if we're cows or something. This is that the percentage of the population, when joked, would ensure the protection of the nation as a whole, allowing us to supposedly return to normal. This is a lie. As you've seen in the report earlier, where I showed you what has happened in Norway, what has happened in Singapore, there is no herd immunity to be achieved. This narrative is still being echoed by some Jamaicans who still believe this lie and trickery from what I call a poor excuse of a government. How do we know this is a lie? We know now because at least one other country has reached and surpassed this so-called herd immunity, with over 78% of their population fully vaccinated and are facing the unbelievable nightmare of losing the sovereignty of their body. Israel is that nation. where instead of an end to the pandemic with freedom and normalcy, they have found themselves in a predicament that they could never have imagined. For the Pfizer jab, they now realize that the immunity lasts only 6 months. In August, they found that half of Israel's seriously ill patients who are currently hospitalized were fully vaccinated at least 5 months ago. And now the government of that country is requiring booster shots after every 6 months to maintain immunity. Do they have a choice? Hardly, as they have a vaccine passport system in place. That passport allows them to be part of society, to buy and sell, to travel, to do those everyday things we take for granted. Unfortunately, that passport is only valid for 6 months, the same time as the need for a booster shot. The people are now caught between a rock and a hard place. They can become vaccine junkies now with a weakened immune system, open up to any opportunistic infection, just like persons suffering from AIDS, or they must drop out of society, lose their wealth, their property, and their freedoms. It is sad, but the whole country of Israel has now been turned into a death camp filled with slaves who are now controlled by the vaccine makers. They are a second Holocaust victim waiting to happen. The good news, though, is that they have woken up to the plan and are resisting the planned third and fourth jabs, or booster shots as they call it. It may well be too late for them, but my fellow Jamaicans, it is not too late for us. This wholeness administration is about to force all Jamaicans, young and old, and especially the poor, into the Tel Aviv train, or onto the Tel Aviv train, the same train that the Israeli peoples are now held prisoners on. This train is called a vaccine passport. My fellow Jamaicans, this is not a joke or anything that I have made up. It is a one-way street with no return. The Israelis are ahead of us, and we can see what is happening to them in real time, and we must learn from their wretched experience. This is the road that Andrew Holness wants to take us down, and we will get there soon if we don't wise up and rise up. The pieces are in place. Number one, the vaccine passport system technology and its QR code number system is in place, waiting on the legal green light and enough vaccines to be made a requirement of all persons to access public and private services, to travel, and potentially to access even your own money and property. In short, the choice will be to take the joke or starve to death. And when he has enough vaccines, he will send the army out to hunt down, capture, and juke anyone alive. I'm not joking. It is going to be no longer your body, but their choice. The current juke for a job attack on employees is just the beginning of Andrew's sinister plan. Number two, the NIDS legislation to make it mandatory and the requirement to travel. The vaccine passport linked to the NIDS will combine in a plan to put every Jamaican into the fake vaccine net by force or by fraud. He doesn't care. One way or the other, his plan is to ensure that all of us are captured. And of course, by all of us, I mean every single poor person, middle income persons. Those who are rich enough can buy themselves out of some of these things. But for the vast majority of us, there will be no escape whatsoever. Once you accept this system of vaccine passport, all the freedoms that this nation acquired and for which our forefathers and ancestors fought and died will be null and void. The first use of these vaccine passports will be to drive the rate of vaccination up, as many of us fear the social and economic exclusion. This diabolical passport will be used to exclude the unvaccinated from society gradually. Without the certificate, it will be impossible to function. They know many will give in and board the Tel Aviv train. Unable to disembark, they will have to go wherever it takes them, even into a new concentration camp. The UIC is bringing this information to all the freedom-loving Jamaicans. The situation in Israel is known in the international community, and our own government must be aware of this road and where it leads, which means their plans are intentional. That is why they and the mainstream media are not telling anyone. That is why they want to silence the UIC and anyone who speaks out. If the man in the street ever becomes aware of the destination of Israel, people would jump off that ship, they would resist, and they would rebel openly. And the Andrew Oldest administration would be finished. Not even the security forces would support it. And many, many bitter and angry mothers who were tricked into joking their kids would be at the front of the line to see to the end of this administration. This government has endangered the truth and cannot be trusted. You have to ask questions and you must get answers to make sure you're not jumping out of the frying pan and into the fire. People, wise up, rise up, and defend your rights and freedoms. You have the right to know what is in this biological technology that they want to put into you. You must know what it is they want to inject into you and what effect it will have on you, not just today, but in 2, 3, or 5 years. We must learn from what is going on right now in other countries. Look at Israel. You have a right to know the reasons for the government's rejection of the many warning of the dangers of this drug from thousands of international experts. What if these warnings are true? That the vaccines contain deadly toxins that over time could seriously injure, kill, or make sterile billions of people. In the months ahead, the UIC will join hands with every freedom-loving persons, those who have taken the so-called vaccine and those who have not, to defend our liberty and our rights and to demand justice for those who have suffered harm, injury, or death. Join with us, stand with us. It doesn't matter whether you took it or not already. What matters now is for you to defend your freedom and for you to seek justice. So I invite you to join us, to stay united, to be vigilant, because this is the price of freedom. Freedom, my friends, is not free. We have to fight for it, and we have to fight to keep it, and we have to fight to secure it. And always remember this. Do not be divided in your homes. Do not be divided in your community. Do not allow them to divide us as a nation. Do not be divided in your region. Do not be divided into diaspora versus local. We're all one people, one Jamaica. Let us respect life in all its forms. Let us be a part of each other and work together. Let us protect at all costs the right to choose and support the things that promote wise decision making. My friends, I am not the least bit put off by the fact that the Prime Minister continues to think that he is going to be able to achieve his objectives by one way or another. I am not put off by that. I have every confidence in the Jamaican people that they're going to rise up, that they're ready to rise up. On the 7th of October, I'm going to be going to court. They have charged me with violating the Public Order Act. They have charged me with violating the Disaster Risk Management Act. And they've charged me with resisting arrest simply because I decided to stand up for our rights, for our freedom. And I will do it all over again. They arrested me on September 22nd. They humiliated me. They mistreated me. and they placed me in a dark, dirty, hot, despicable cell in order to break my spirit and to destroy our movement. But they have only served to strengthen us. You might recall the story in the Bible about Joseph. Joseph was thrown into a pit by his own brothers. His brothers threw him into a pit because they were fearful of him. They thought that he would rise up and become a ruler over them. And so they tried to get rid of him. But what they did not know was that Joseph was being protected by a power higher than any of them could ever muster. And so, even though they threw Joseph into a pit, Joseph was pulled out of the pit, and Joseph was made governor and prime minister over Egypt, and Joseph saved his people. My friends, there's a power that's bigger than Andrew. There's a power that's bigger than Mark. There's a power that's bigger than their foreign masters. There's a power that's bigger than the employers. There's a power that's bigger than all of us. And that power is behind the movement of the UIC, because we are for liberty and justice for all. And so come the morning of September 7th, sorry, not September 7th, October 7th, at 10 a.m. at the Halfway Tree Courthouse, I am going to walk boldly into that courthouse and declare liberty for the people of Jamaica. We're going to stand up against Andrew Holness. We're going to stand up against those who support him. We're going to stand up against the most powerful movement in the world and let them know that the Jamaican people are not going to join their laboratory. The 70% of us who oppose this are going to stand firm. And even those who may have taken the joke are going to realize that they have been tricked, and they're going to turn against them and join with us. And here's the good part about this. Because of their folly, we are going to free Jamaica once and for all and totally. We're going to make Jamaica the world's first non-partisan constitutional republic, where the freedoms, the liberties, the sovereignty of the individual for the first time will be fully respected anywhere on the planet. America wanted to be a free nation. We are going to show them what a true free nation is. The Statue of Liberty will stand high in Jamaica. We shall be the beacon of freedom to the entire world. We shall be that one nation on the planet where people are truly free. We shall be the Jamaica we were meant to be. We're going to be the country of destiny that joins together our Caribbean brothers and sisters and bring liberty to the entire Caribbean and draw to us our families in Africa and make the entire African continent a free nation, the kind of people that Marcus Garvey talked about so well when he said, "This skin color will be a badge of honor." We are going to show them that black people can govern themselves well. Black people can be a tremendous set of leaders. We're not just good in entertainment and athletics. We're also good in academics. We're good in governance, and we're good in economics. And so now the UIC is going to lead Jamaica into a new and brilliant political and economic future where the division will be no more. The trickery of the colonial masters, where they tricked us into being divided into partisan factions, fighting each other, that trickery is going to come to an end, my friends. We're going to be a truly united nation. Will we have differences? Of course we will. When you put two or more people together, you have differences, but there's no reason why we should be divided into camps. Instead, we're going to be united by principle. The principle that every man has a right to be free. Every woman has a right to be free. And the purpose of government is to protect that right. The right to your life, the right to your liberty, and the right to your property. So long as you do not use force or fraud to injure the life, liberty, or property of others. And when our government ceases to honor that responsibility, it is our solemn duty and obligation to abolish such a government and to set up another. And so, my friends, I invite you all to join me and the United Independence Congress of Jamaica as we abolish this government, this constitution, this colonial model, and set up something far more superior, where we, the people of Jamaica, shall finally be a republic where the people are sovereign and no monarch sits above us as a sovereign. We, the people of Jamaica, are going to be a free people, and Andrew, the PNP, the GLP, the Queen, the Governor General, not one of them can stand in our way because we mean business this time. Let's move forward and create our first ever truly Independence Day with September 22nd as the marker. September 22nd is the day when we said no more. No more to the PNP, no more to the GLP, no more to division, no more to distractions, and no more to the extraction of our wealth by the small elite here and their foreign masters who back them up. Huh? It's over. So, my friends, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible when I come on the courthouse steps on October 7th at 10 a.m. You shall see us all there in our blue, representing the royalty that we are and the peace-loving people that we are. And so I thank you all again for your wonderful support, your tremendous backing. This is a new dawn for Jamaica. We are going to create a beautiful and prosperous country where freedom shall reign and liberty shall be the norm for every man, woman, and child. Thank you. Have a good night and see you again soon. Tomorrow night, 8 a.m., I'll be on with Mr. Vegas. I think he wants to ask me some questions, and I'm looking forward to answering them. Because you know what? We take interview with anyone because we're not afraid. We know what we're about, and we're ready to stand up and support what we have been working for all these years. The UIC didn't just start yesterday, but now many people are learning about us today. And we are going to create that new Jamaica that some may have thought were never possible, would never be possible. But here we are. It's going to be done. So thank you, and have yourself a wonderful night until we talk again tomorrow at 8 p.m. Take care now. Good night.